Los Angeles is often celebrated as the city of dreams, the place where Hollywood lights shine brightest, where actors, musicians, and entrepreneurs arrive with ambitions of fame and fortune. Its beaches glisten in the sunlight, its palm-lined boulevards stretch endlessly, and its skyline reflects the ambition of modern America. From Beverly Hills mansions to Malibu villas, La presents itself as a place where anything is possible. But beneath that glossy image lies a darker reality, one that many visitors never see or choose not to. Just blocks away from expensive lofts and luxury boutiques, there exists a parallel world defined not by wealth and opportunity, but by survival, addiction, and despair. This is Skid Row, a 50-block stretch in downtown Los Angeles that has become ground zero for one of the largest homeless populations in the United States. Walking through Skid Row feels like entering another universe. Tents and makeshift shelters line the sidewalks as far as the eye can see. Tarps are tied to fences, mattresses lie discarded on the ground, and shopping carts serve as closets on wheels. The smell is a mix of sweat, urine, rotting food, and smoke. Hundreds of people wander the streets, some pushing carts, some slumped against walls, and others lost in the haze of drug-induced stupor. In many ways, Skid Row is a symbol of America's homelessness crisis, an unflinching look at what happens when the most vulnerable fall through every crack in society. The history of Skid Row stretches back over a century. In the early 1900s, downtown Los Angeles was already a gathering place for transient workers, many drawn by the railroad and the promise of seasonal jobs. Cheap hotels and boarding houses offered temporary shelter, and missions provided food to those in need. Over time, as the city grew wealthier and more glamorous, those left behind were pushed into tighter corners. By the 1970s and 1980s, a combination of factors, rising housing costs, the closure of mental health institutions, and the crack cocaine epidemic, turned Skid Row into a containment zone for homelessness. Instead of solving the problem, city leaders concentrated it into a few blocks, creating a neighborhood where poverty and addiction became inescapable. Today, Skid Row is home to an estimated 10,000 people on any given night. The population shifts constantly, with some finding temporary shelter, others returning to the streets, and many cycling between jail, hospitals, and homelessness. The sidewalks are crowded not only with tents, but with the visible signs of a system in collapse, used needles, discarded clothing, and the constant wail of sirens as paramedics respond to overdoses and violence. Drug use is rampant. Fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine dominate the scene, creating a cycle that is almost impossible to escape. Outreach workers carry Narcan, the overdose reversing drug, and use it daily, sometimes multiple times on the same person. Yet for every life saved, another is lost. In Los Angeles County, hundreds die each year on the streets, often anonymously, their stories buried beneath statistics. But Skid Row is not just about drugs and despair, it is also about resilience. Inside this forgotten neighborhood are churches, shelters, and just as nonprofits that refuse to give up. Volunteers hand out food and water, medical teams treat infections and wounds, and advocates fight tirelessly for affordable housing and rehabilitation programs. For many living there, survival is itself an act of resistance. They form communities, watch each other's belongings, and create small pockets of humanity amid the chaos. Still, the crisis grows. Los Angeles spends billions on homelessness programs, yet progress feels invisible. New shelters are often met with resistance from nearby neighborhoods. Affordable housing projects take years to complete and cost staggering amounts. And while politicians argue about policy, the tents multiply. Residents of the city grow frustrated, torn between compassion and fear, while business owners complain of lost customers and tourists leave with an image of Los Angeles far different from the one Hollywood sells. What makes Skid Row particularly haunting is its proximity to wealth. Just a few blocks away, luxury lofts rent for thousands of dollars a month. Rooftop bars sparkle with lights, and Teslas glide past. The stark contrast between abundance and deprivation is unavoidable. In no other city is the divide between dream and despair so physically close, so jarringly visible. For some, Skid Row is proof that the American dream is broken, that in the richest state of the richest country in the world, tens of thousands can live without roofs, safety, or dignity. For others, it is a challenge, a reminder that solutions must be found. No matter how complex or costly, every tent has a story, a veteran abandoned after serving his country, a woman fleeing domestic violence with nowhere to turn, a young man broken by addiction after a workplace injury, families torn apart by housing costs that outpace wages. Skid Row is not just a place, it is a mirror, reflecting the failures of policy, the cruelty of inequality, and the consequences of ignoring society's most vulnerable. Los Angeles is still the city of dreams. But as long as Skid Row exists, it will also be the city of forgotten dreams, the place where America's promises fade into the harsh reality of survival. To understand how Los Angeles reached this point, we must first look back at history. Skid Row did not appear overnight. Its roots go back more than a century. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Los Angeles was already a booming city. The area that would later become known as Skid Row was originally a hub for seasonal laborers, men who worked on railroads, in agriculture, or in shipping. They would arrive in the city for short stints, staying in cheap hotels or flop houses before moving on to their next job. Because of this transient workforce, downtown Los Angeles became home to single-room occupancy hotels and boarding houses that catered to men who had no families and little stability. By the 1930s, the Great Depression pushed even more people into poverty. Skid Row grew as unemployment spread. Charities, missions, and churches moved into the area to provide meals and shelter. Over time, it became the place where the city sent its poor, its jobless, and its broken. When Los Angeles began revitalizing other neighborhoods in the 1950s and 1960s, many low-income residents were forced out, leaving Skid Row as one of the last affordable havens for the desperate. By the 1980s, the decline of mental health institutions and the rise of crack cocaine only accelerated the crisis. Patients who were once kept in state hospitals found themselves on the streets with nowhere to go. At the same time, cheap drugs flooded the area, transforming Skid Row into a place where addiction and mental illness collided. Today, the numbers are staggering. More than 75,000 people are homeless in Los Angeles County, with Skid Row representing one of the densest concentrations. In just a few square miles, thousands of people live without permanent shelter. Some are longtime residents stuck in cycles of poverty and addiction, while others are recent arrivals, victims of eviction, domestic violence, or rising rents. In a city where the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment exceeds $2,000 a month, even a minor setback can push someone into homelessness. For many, Skid Row becomes the last stop, but homelessness in Los Angeles is not just about poverty. It is also about drugs. Walking through Skid Row, one cannot ignore the open use of narcotics. Heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and crack cocaine flow through the streets like an underground economy. Dealers work openly while users inject themselves in plain view. Syringes litter the sidewalks. The rise of fentanyl in recent years has made the situation even more deadly. Overdoses occur daily, with some tents serving as both homes and tombs. For those caught in addiction, leaving Skid Row becomes nearly impossible. The drugs hold them hostage, and the environment ensures they remain trapped. The desperation is visible in every face. Take the story of Anthony, a former Marine who returned from Iraq with severe PTSD. Struggling to adjust to civilian life, he turned to alcohol, then meth. After losing his job and his apartment, he found himself on Skid Row. He describes the area as a black hole, a place that pulls you in and refuses to let you go. Or consider Maria, a mother who fled domestic violence only to end up in a tent with her 2 children. She spends her days guarding her kids from predators while trying to secure enough food from local missions. Stories like theirs are not rare. They are the reality of Skid Row. Law enforcement plays a complicated role in this ecosystem. Police patrols are frequent, but arrests often do little to solve the deeper issues. When tents are cleared during sweeps, people simply move to another block. Critics argue that criminalizing homelessness only adds to the cycle, while supporters insist that without policing, the streets would descend into even greater chaos. Skid Row exists in a constant tension between order and anarchy. The city pours millions into temporary housing and outreach programs. Yet the problem persists and by many measures worsens. Mental health services are in high demand but in short supply. A large percentage of Skid Row's population suffers from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or untreated trauma. The lack of adequate treatment facilities means many cycle between jail, hospitals, and the streets. Advocates often describe Skid Row as an open-air asylum, where society's most vulnerable are left to fend for themselves. And while nonprofits, churches, and outreach workers do heroic work, their efforts can only stretch so far against the scale of the crisis. The contradiction of Los Angeles is stark. Just a few blocks away from Skid Row are luxury high-rises where apartments rent for thousands of dollars per month. Fine dining restaurants, art galleries, and tech startups thrive within walking distance of tents filled with human suffering. This coexistence of extreme wealth and extreme poverty is what makes the crisis so visible and so jarring. Visitors from around the world often leave shocked, unable to reconcile the glamorous image of Los Angeles with the grim reality they have witnessed. Statisticians have promised solutions for decades, yet progress is painfully slow. Proposals range from building more affordable housing to increasing mental health services to expanding drug treatment programs. However, the bureaucratic process combined with community resistance to homeless shelters often stalls meaningful change. Meanwhile, every day that passes, more people fall into homelessness, rising housing costs, stagnant wages, and the aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic have only accelerated the problem. For many Angelenos, the fear of losing their own homes is all too real. Despite the despair, there are stories of resilience. Outreach programs like the Los Angeles Mission, Union Rescue Mission, and Midnight Mission provide thousands of meals daily and offer pathways to recovery. Some individuals do manage to escape Skid Row, finding housing and sobriety after years on the streets. But these success stories are the exception rather than the rule. For every person who leaves, many more arrive. Skid Row continues to grow, fueled by systemic failures that extend far beyond the neighborhood itself. Ultimately, Skid Row forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. What does it say about a society that allows thousands to live and die on the streets in the shadow of wealth? Can a city truly call itself progressive if so many of its residents sleep on sidewalks? Is homelessness a failure of individual choices, or is it the inevitable result of economic systems that leave millions behind? These questions have no easy answers, but they demand to be asked. Los Angeles' homeless explosion is not just a local crisis, it is a national one. Cities across America, from San Francisco to New York, struggle with similar issues. But Skid Row stands out because of its scale, its visibility, and its history. It is both a place and a symbol, a reminder of how quickly the dream can turn into a nightmare. As the sun sets over Los Angeles, the divide becomes even clearer. The city lights glow over the hills, illuminating skyscrapers and Hollywood billboards, while in Skid Row, darkness settles over rows of tents. Fires burn in trash cans for warmth, sirens echo in the distance, and the night begins for those who call the streets home. For the residents of Skid Row, survival is the only dream left. And until America finds the courage to address the root causes mental health, addiction, poverty, and housing inequality, Skid Row will remain a city within a city, a shadow beneath the spotlight, a place of drugs, despair, and broken dreams in the heart of Los Angeles.